Good morning. This is 1 in 36, a presentation from Anderson Center for Autism, celebrating their centennial in 2024. 1 in 36 is a weekly show devoted to autism spectrum disorder.
Good morning and welcome to 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky. I'm the Chief Development Officer at Anderson Center for Autism. And today I'm talking with Dan Howard from the Berkshire Scenic Railway Museum. Dan, good morning. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. I always really enjoy the aspect of hosting this podcast because I get to talk to so many different people doing so many different things, all of which have something to do with autism, you know, whether it's research, practical applications, being the parent or family member, caregiver for a loved one on the spectrum. And so many people who are taking often passions that they've held for a long time themselves and finding ways to make them more accessible, inclusive, opportunities for other people, especially those with autism, to learn about those things and to explore their own passions in a way that's comfortable and not overwhelming for them and the rest of their families. So I'm hoping we're going to talk about some of that stuff today, but let's start with a little bit more about you. I know you have quite a background, and I'd love for you to share that with us to get started.
My background professionally is civil engineering. I'm a licensed professional engineer, retired at this time. And over many years since I was a child, I had the interest in trains, the train set in the basement and going on train rides and all that good stuff. And fortunately, there are dozens and hundreds of heritage rail museums across the country and across the world that provide the opportunity that people can actually go and volunteer at railroad museums. I started with a trolley museum up in Maine and was with them for quite a number of years. And now I'm with the Berkshire Scenic Railway Museum, where I've been for the last 8 years. And there's such a wide range of opportunities. You can turn a wrench, you can paint things, you can curate, you can be a train conductor, you can work your way up to engineer, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I don't think I knew. First of all, I definitely didn't know how many heritage museums there are throughout the whole world. And I wonder if you have a theory, since you're passionate about trains and sounds like you always have been. Do you have a theory about why trains are such a draw for so many people, autistic or not? I mean, really, I think the trains are they fascinate such a huge part of the population overall. What is it that you think that about the train itself, or about what is that all about? Not everything has that draw.
Honestly, I'm not sure on the wide range, but what's neat about the railroad hobby or heritage railroading is there's something in it for everyone. I love the history, learning about the history, recreating history with our historic equipment. There's people that collect things like padlocks for switches and the lanterns. There's paper inferior. There's all kinds of things that can be collected, related, and learned about regarding railroads. And it's such a big part of the history of great parts of the world, but especially part of our country. It was developed, the central and western parts of our country were developed by railroads. People settled on the railroad lines. People either had relatives working for the railroad or knew good friends who worked for the railroad for a number of years. It's not quite that way anymore, but it's ingrained as part of our fabric.
I would agree with that. I think that's a great way to put it. And also, if you were to sort of go back with almost anybody's family, into, generation upon generation, and really back to the time that this country was, the Midwest and the West was being developed, you likely would find somebody in just about every family history who worked with or for or near the railroad and had a connection. So I think that's a really, really great point. I also think that even just auditorily, sensorily, trains can be very soothing. There are sounds associated with the trains that just everybody knows, the sound of the train going over the tracks, the whistle, a train going by. If you're in a car or hiking or something and you're near a train, a railroad, I think so much of that, many of them have a certain smell, a certain just sense that comes over you. And there's a mythology not the right word, but when I think of riding the train, one of the things that I like about it, regardless of what type of train I'm on, is the rhythm of it. There's almost a music to it when you're, hearing it go over the tracks, and you can feel it going over the tracks, where you can really get into almost a meditative state sometimes. Yeah. And honestly, as somebody who drives a lot, you're not driving. It gives you a little bit of a break from that overload. But speaking of driving, you are currently you are a conductor.
I am a conductor
with Berkshire Scenic Railway. So tell us about what that role is, and how often are you on the train, making it go?
The conductor is the chief of the train. The engineer drives the train, and he or she is responsible for operating it safely. But the conductor, the buck stops there. And so there's a lot of responsibilities that go along with being a conductor. Mm-hmm. And generally our volunteers, I'm out there every few weeks. We have kind of an open schedule that we put people in when they're available. But generally every couple of weeks, we're out there for a day as we operate our trains.
That's great. And you're interacting with the guests on the train, the people who are coming on for a ride?
Absolutely. Yeah. We are in the tourism business. We're in the history business. We enjoy trains. We enjoy running trains, but it's not the train enthusiasts who are going to keep the lights on at the museums. It's people that are coming to ride the trains, and we come up with events such as this to attract more people to come in and return and keep coming back and riding the trains. And so it's just a wonderful experience talking with people and interacting with the customers and all of that.
Yeah, I love it. There's a huge stewardship component to what you're doing. You've also got to really love interacting with people and having answers to probably a wide variety of questions, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Since there's something for everyone, like you said, when it comes to trains.
And everything they're looking at out the window. So it's not just the train itself. They want to know about the area and what's going on.
That's true. You're a tour guide as well. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Now, I understand that you recently celebrated the 40th anniversary is that correct?
We did. It's our 40th year. Just this past month, we had a couple of celebrations at Lenox at our main museum and yard complex.
Well, congratulations. What were the events well attended? I mean, can you give us an idea of how you celebrated? Anything really sort of unique?
Actually, I was out of town on vacation, so unfortunately, I didn't get to attend, but we had a gala event at the museum where we showcased a special train that's been leased to us. It's a one-of-a-kind train that the New Haven Railroad had and was meticulously restored by Jim Gagliardi and the Bud RDC Foundation, and he's entrusted it to us. And so there were some tours of that equipment. And then we had a concert down at the Stockbridge Depot that we also own about 8 miles south of Lenox. And that was on Sunday.
That's great. Well, congratulations, 40 years. And I hope here's to another at least 40, if not more. And just, no reason to ever stop. Are you looking actively for more volunteers? Are you looking for a new generation? Or, do you have people, are there volunteer spots open, or is it the kind of thing where, people have to wait to get involved? What would you say to somebody who's maybe thinking about reaching out?
We are always looking for more volunteers. And unfortunately, coming out of COVID, as you might be aware, volunteerism is unfortunately at a very low point right now across many industries, not just the heritage railroad industry. And so one of my roles is volunteer coordinator, excuse me. And so, yes, we are always looking for more volunteers. Don't think you're going to come right in and drive the train. We're actually a federally regulated industry, and there's some training experience that comes in, but you come in the door and we provide any training necessary. And maybe you don't want to be on the train. Maybe you want to help sell tickets and work in our gift shop, or turn a wrench, or curate our artifacts. There's a very wide range of opportunities for volunteers. BerkshireTrains.org is our website, and there are links on there to both sign up for newsletters and also reach out to us if you're interested in volunteering.
I think that's great. And one of the things you mentioned before, Dan, was painting. And I just want to highlight that one, because I would assume that there's probably, whether it's things in the museum that need, sort of cleaning and painting, or even parts of the trains themselves that sometimes need that kind of upkeep. If you're a person who really maybe is not quite as social, maybe is a little bit, wants to step in, but wants to kind of do something on your own for a little bit, or a little bit to the side. Are there opportunities that are less sort of socially interactive at the beginning, just to get a sense of what it's like to be there and have the trains coming and going and people coming and going, but you're doing something that's also productive and helpful?
Yep, there can be. We can try to tailor some arrangements so that you're comfortable with your volunteering experience with us, not sure how you want to fit in and make it work. And we try to accommodate as much as possible to help folks that are trying to onboard with us.
That's great. So again, that's berkshiretrains.org for more information about volunteering and getting in touch with the people there, including Dan. We're going to take a short break, Dan, but when we get back, we're going to get into all the things that you're doing with the connecting the partnership with Guidewire of Western Massachusetts for sensory sensitive events. We're going to talk about some of your other holiday events, some upcoming things, and then even some things that maybe are very much in the early works, but are going to be happening, so people know why they should be, following you guys and your work, and when might be the perfect time for them to come up for a visit.
Sounds great.
All right. This is 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and we'll be right back.
Somewhere there's a river rushing through the woods while someone rushes through their day. There's a mountain looking up at the sky while someone looks down at their phone. A trail waiting to be walked while someone waits for a latte. This world is full of somewheres waiting for someone just like you. So go see yours at 154 national forests and 20 grasslands. And to learn more, visit nationalforest.org. The National Forest Foundation. See yours somewhere.
Retirement can be scary, but only if you're not prepared. That's why AARP created thisispretirement.org. Because unless you've already retired, you're in pretirement, and you still have time to plan. Learn about retirement savings options, potential tax breaks, and how you can build savings over time. Visit thisispretirement.org for free resources to help you customize your action plan and feel the retirement fear disappear. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
If I could be you.
And you could be me. For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
And now, 1 in 36 continues on 100.7 WHUD. This is a weekly community affairs program presented by the Anderson Center for Autism.
Welcome back to 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and I'm talking with Dan Howard, who is the conductor, volunteer coordinator, and the conductor trainer for federal certification and many other things, I would think, spokesperson today, anyway, for the Berkshire Scenic Railway Museum and all it has to offer. So, Dan, it's been a pleasure so far talking with you.
Absolutely.
And you gave us a lot of background on yourself and kind of talked about the museum and how long it's been around, which is 40 years. So again, congratulations. Let's talk about your partnership with Guidewire of Western Massachusetts and tell us a little bit about Guidewire and what these sensory sensitive events are that you're running with them.
A number of us at the museum have been looking to try to host sensory sensitive events for a number of years. And finally, we worked through people who knew people and these people and those people, and we were put in touch with Guidewire. And they were very excited to participate. They're out of Western Massachusetts, and they provide volunteers. They've actually worked with us hand in hand to develop our sensory sensitive events. And they participate at the events, helping with when we board the people on the train, working with the people on the train, and then when we go to move them off at the end of the ride. And they bring along squishy toys and fidget spinners. Some of them actually have members of the community as their own children. So they're very happy that we can provide these experiences, because in Western Massachusetts, there are not many activities for members of this community. So they're both happy that we're doing this and hoping that others also pick up the ball and run with it as well.
Absolutely. I will underscore that 100%. This is a growing movement, these sensory sensitive events, sensory kits, things like headphones, squishy toys, fidget spinners. and also just a training and an understanding for the people working, whether, you're running a for-profit or non-for-profit business, a restaurant, a train museum, any other kind of museum. There's so much benefit to people who then feel that they can come out of their homes and access the recreational and social opportunities in their communities that really can be done with a minimal amount of training and effort by the people who are working in those locations. I hope that was your experience. In general, it's sort of things that once you learn about them, they make perfect sense. And they also tend to be helpful to the general public, not just people with autism and other sensory needs. So how has it been received so far, these events?
Overwhelmingly positive. Our first event, and the only one we've done so far, we had an Easter Bunny day where all of our trains that day were sensory sensitive. We had 2 trains and they were sold out, and we had a group that wanted to book every ticket. And so we talked to the crew, talked to everybody ahead of time, and we actually scheduled that group for a third run just for them so they wouldn't buy up all the tickets. So we ran 3 trains that day, almost 120 passengers.
Wow.
Everybody was happy. The crew enjoyed it, the volunteers enjoyed it, and the folks that were participating really, really appreciated it.
That's fabulous. And I'm reading here in my notes that the charter run was a residential program.
Yes.
And so that resonates with me because I know working at Anderson, we have a significant residential program here at Anderson on our children's campus. And also we serve a number of adults, over 100 adults in our adult residential program. And being able to go out and enjoy things that, a lot of us take for granted, field trips, overnight camps, things like that. It does take the effort of the in this case, you and your colleagues and the other volunteers and the crew to be able to say, yes, we want you to come, and we're going to make that extra effort to say yes, because it provides a bonding experience. It provides a break from sort of the routine that can happen in a lot of the residential programs, and a shared experience, which I'm a firm believer that the more shared experiences we as a society can have with each other, just life gets better. There's an appreciation for each other. There's a kindness that comes out of it. There's learning on all sides. So I'm thrilled to hear that. What's on deck? What's coming up next?
Well, we're on August 24th. We're going to have a day of sensory sensitive ice cream train rides. We do ice cream train rides in the summer. You ride the train, and then we have a Mr. Dingling truck that's parked near where we got on. Excuse me. And you get a free ice cream at the end of the train ride.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
But what's going to be different and make this a sensory sensitive event?
Well, what we do, we have window shades, window screens, so that about 1/3 of the train is screened for the light sensitive folks.
Okay.
And we don't do our narration. Usually the train ride has a narration on history, trains, things like that. The folks from Guidewire have some nice music that we try to play in the background, so we get some soothing music going on. We don't have any fluorescent lights on in the train.
Excellent.
And we only put on some incandescent lights if need be. If we had a nice sunny day, we won't even put any lights on in the train.
Nice.
So that's going quietly. Our Mr. Dingling truck, we work with them so that they're not playing that loud, noisy music at the end. Mm-hmm. So they have a nice, quiet experience also there.
Many of us, myself included, would love it if we didn't, the music gets loud, I get it, but the music gets loud. Actually, Anderson is one of the only programs that I know of our type that has our own ice cream truck. So we actually have one. It does play the music, and man, it attracts those kids quickly. But we share an appreciation for being able to just things like that, just giving access in a comfortable way to people who otherwise it might be too loud, it might be too overstimulating, but who are allowed to just be themselves, we all still want ice cream from the ice cream truck. We should be, encouraged and given the opportunity to do that with our families, with our siblings who maybe aren't autistic and but just have, again, that shared experience. So I think that's great. A quick question. When you're doing these sensory sensitive train rides, is there a deeper understanding and maybe awareness of the fact that some of the people riding the train might get a little overstimulated during the train ride? It might, do some hand flapping, might engage in some vocalizations that otherwise maybe folks haven't heard before or haven't, observed before. And is there a sense or is there a training involved with your crew that is just sort of to let that kind of go ahead and happen? And it's just that person's way of exhibiting excitement or joy that they're having a fun time? Is that part of the training or the conversations you've had with Guidewire?
Yep. Ahead of time, there were a number of professionally made YouTube videos online that we found.
Yes.
And so all of our volunteers who are participating have watched these. And it helps with this community, and it helps even just for how we interact with just the physically disabled. People didn't know, don't reach for that wheelchair, don't reach for the walker, things of that nature. So we trained them, hey, this is how to properly interact with members of this community. And they're part of our general community who's riding the train. So we have that going on. We also sell only 50% of the tickets. So the people who are coming on in their groups, they have some space. They're not crowded in with other people. So you have a little bit of room. So there's a chance that you're lesser chance of an overstimulation situation. But if that happens, it's understandable. And we're prepared as best as possible to properly attend to it.
Most of the time, honestly, the best thing to do is just to accept that it's happening and that it's most often something that's really benign and just somebody's way of communicating that they're having a good time.
Yeah.
So, be kind and understanding and not jump to conclusions. So that's awesome. I think what you're doing is really exciting. I love that it's ongoing. You mentioned to me before we started the official podcast here today that there might be some more things coming up in the future that are in the planning stages. Do you want to talk about any of that?
There are, but also ahead of that, our campus in Lenox, which is about 45 minutes from where the train rides at Adams are, we have a museum with a depot and a whole bunch of trains there. And that's open Saturdays from 10 to 2, from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Okay.
But it's also available if people wanted to make arrangements or set up something, we could possibly open the museum up for groups for that as well.
Oh, fun. So if somebody had a real passion for it and wanted to do something to celebrate there, they might be able to do something?
Absolutely.
Great. Fun.
Yeah, we have things like that available. So coming up, we mentioned the ice cream train. We're working with Guidewire on a Halloween train. A couple of Halloween trains at the end of October.
Okay.
No scary costumes. And then we're hoping that we can do one of our Christmas trains as a sensory sensitive. We get the jolly guy in the red suit comes and visits all the kids.
That is awesome. I'm so excited to hear that. I assume that there'll be information about all of these things at berkshiretrains.org.
Correct.
We want people to go. All right. So check in. Make sure you're checking that website. Berkshiretrains.org is where you can find all this information. Do you buy tickets ahead of time, Dan, or buy them ahead of time?
We're preferred. You right on that website, you can click on buy tickets. You can see the calendar of what's coming up, when tickets are available. You can also see how many tickets are left.
Yeah. Awesome. That sounds great. I think what you're doing is really great. I love the 50% ticket. That also shows your commitment to, making this work for your for your riders and not only for the museum itself. I think everybody wins there. Sometimes just having a little extra space, as you said, is really the make it or break it for a successful outing with a loved one who has some sensory needs. So just awesome. And again, please visit berkshiretrains.org. And Dan Howard, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for what you and your crew are doing. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
This is 1 in 36, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky. And remember, Anderson cares.
You've been listening to 1 in 36, a weekly presentation from Anderson Center for Autism, celebrating their centennial in 2024. Join them for another edition of the show next weekend.